Okay, so I'll keep this brief because I know we're a little bit behind. So Jen Rogers is going to be our next speaker. She studied at University of Iowa for both her PhD and did her postdoc there. And she has since taught at University of Iowa and Cornell College. She's now an associate professor of instruction in the Department of Health and Human Physiology. Multiple publications. She's been associated with multiple textbooks. And so I'll just leave it at that. So there you go.
All right, can you all hear me? So it's really interesting as I was putting the presentation together, and I have to be honest, I was doing it last night after dinner, but that was okay because I liked hearing what we talked about during yesterday's conversations, and it really did help me frame some of what I'm going to say. And there are so many parallels to what we've just been talking about, so I'm actually really excited. Just a couple of other comments. We just talked about the name and refining PMIG. I have one additional addendum. I think we should have a mascot, and I think it should be a narwhal. What do you all think about that? I think that would be awesome. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so keep that in mind. So what did we do? We decided at some point that it would be interesting to hear what the students think about their undergraduate experience, their experiences in physiology. But beyond that, there really is a strong rationale for why we need to take another look. First of all, the landscape of undergraduate physiology has changed from what it used to be. I have a picture that illustrates this just a little bit. I know I can't actually, to be truthful, I can't even think back to my undergrad days, but I remember as a PhD student and a master's student, my physiology courses looked a lot different than they do now. We'll talk about student demographic characteristics coming up in just a little bit. So we've moved from the conveying of information, the role of the instructor is to provide the information, to a learner-centered course design. The availability of standardized assessments, the phys maps, the core concepts, the leap up. We haven't had these tools before, and we do now. So we're able to get more information about the students that we teach. Also, the emphasis on competencies and career skills. This is something new. It used to be teaching physiology was you just taught the facts. In addition, there's been a change in who's teaching the students and likely who the students are. So it was important to get at least a rough overview of who's taking undergraduate physiology courses. Now, the idea was to develop the survey, try it out, see how it went. We made mistakes. There were some things I would probably do a little bit different the second time around, but we have some data. We have baseline data. We have a starting point. As we continue the conversations about how we teach undergraduate physiology students, we can gauge how we're progressing and how the characteristics of the physiology students that we are interacting with, how that changes over time. To begin with, how did we do? We invited people to participate in this study. Overall, we received responses from 667 students from 9 institutions, and you can see some of them are big, some of them are small. Now, in order to understand how to interpret the data that we collected, I do think it's important to consider a few different things. Number one, which course was surveyed? As we were going through the process of generating the survey, but really thinking about how are we going to administer the survey, there was a mix of courses. Some of the courses had majors, some had non-majors, and it really became kind of problematic. How do we interpret the results if our interests are undergraduate physiology majors? Also important, was it an upper level course versus a lower level course? And as I mentioned, was it a majors course versus a non-majors course? So what I would like to do quickly is take just a minute or two and have each participating institute stand up and give just the basics of your program. For example, University of Iowa, a large proportion, 219, came from me. 3,500, a 3,000 level course, majors, non-majors. That's a large proportion, or they contributed significantly to the data that I'm going to show. University of Oregon, is there anyone here? I didn't think so. Scranton.
So I think the students who participated in this survey took our general physiology course, which actually is not part of our physiology major. It's the course that we've delivered for years, that biology majors take, exercise science students, and so forth. And so thank you. It's a core part of what would be a pre-med or that type of curriculum.
Okay.
So I think that's more relevant answer than what's our physiology program look like.
Yeah, and that's one of the points that I wanted to make here is we really have to think about the data that we obtained based on the participants who completed it. All right, West Virginia.
This information came from a junior level required course where we actually have 2 courses they take, first and second year advanced physiology. It's exercise physiology. This would have been the second one that's more clinically oriented, but they're all majors and they all got extra credit. I'm actually shocked to see how many did it. So.
All right, Colorado State.
Kelly, would you do it?
We actually sent the survey out to all 300 of our students, so anywhere from freshmen to seniors, and a third of our students responded. So at the end of the semester, it was a little challenging, but I was surprised at that. So no, they're all majors, but not a specific course.
Okay, Gonzaga.
So the students that participated were in my scientific writing course, but they were all sophomores, major students, but they had all completed, this was at the very end of, they completed a year of AMP.
Okay, Indiana State.
Over here. So I sent out an email to every one of the 332 undergraduate majors that we had, and so they're anywhere from freshmen to seniors. But when I got, because we did extra credit with it, when I got it back, there were probably about 10% of those that were nursing students and athletic trainers, and somebody else that had gotten the email from a friend saying, "Hey, you get extra credit." They didn't get extra credit, but so yeah. But we have a wide range.
Okay, Michigan State.
So this was not any part of credit. We also just sent it out to the all of the majors, and I sent a separate sub email to a group that we call the Student Curricular Task Force that I mentor, and they actually provide input to the undergraduate curriculum committee, and there are 10 of them. And so I when I'm seeing that there were 13 people, it probably was those very dedicated students, and then a few others that responded, and those are both junior and senior students in the major.
Okay, University of Arizona.
So Arizona, it was pretty much after the semester had ended, so I couldn't offer extra credit, but I sent it out to a 400 level cardiovascular physiology course.
Okay, so part of the reason of going through that, some students were in a specific physiology course. Some institutions use this as a more programmatic assessment tool. We have to keep that in mind when we take a look at the results. Second point that I wanted to make, if you did participate, Val has very graciously agreed to share your institution's data with you. If you want feedback about what your students think, you can get it. Just give her a couple of weeks. And also keep in mind, it's not going to look all pretty like what I show. You get the CSV file. You get to go through and figure it out for yourself. But it's available for you. All right, so what am I going to talk about? Number one, who are our students who responded to the survey? What do our students want to do? What are student perceptions of physiology coursework? And what are their perceptions of their physiology programs? We're going to start with who are our students. And really, there's 2 things we're going to take a look at, the demographic characteristics and the academic characteristics. For each of the questions that I just posed, I have about 4 or so data slides. So just keep that in mind. Also, keep in mind, I think there is something here for everybody. And I'm going to provide a little bit of a broad overview. If you want to talk about this in more detail with me later, I'm happy to do so. First of all, no surprise, undergraduate physiology students, they tend to be 18 to 20 or 21 to 23. When we take a look at gender, we're going to have more males or females. What do you think? Females. How many more? 64. Ooh, pretty good. Look at that. So either females are interested in completing surveys, or we just have more of them in physiology. And again, this is one of those differences. I started my PhD with Carl DeSalfi. It was very male dominated. And at the time, there weren't very many females. This is a picture of what my classroom looks like. And this is my blended course. This isn't my large lecture. As you take a look, yours probably look very similar. Now, for those in the room who do a little bit more academic advising, what else is noticeable about this figure or this picture? What do you think we're going to talk about next? It's a lot of blondes. Yeah, there's that. That wasn't part of the survey, but yes, there is that. The reported ethnicity, all right? A lot of whites or Caucasians. And in this survey, not so much of some of the other ethnicities. And then if we divide this out into underrepresented minority groups and different websites that I took a look at for what's an underrepresented minority represented this just a little bit differently. Not a lot of diversity. And this might not be representative of the students that are in your program.
Just having talked a little bit of time before, it would be nice to know which of the, to aggregate the data by CAP majors.
And I think we can. I think Val,
they would have to self-report. They would just have to self-report to me who is a capped major, and then we could filter it that way.
Okay.
Was that what you said, capped, Jenny?
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're
there's
writing
probably
that,
a way to find that.
You're writing that down so we could do it better
Yeah.
the next time?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. All right, so the next demographic characteristics, are you a first-generation college student? And are you an international student? So again, how well does this data match with the students that are in your courses? It's hard to make inferences because I just don't really feel like we have a clear snapshot of undergraduate physiology students from across the country. We have a snapshot of a lot, 200 and some students from my physiology course. Oh, and that's one thing I was going to make, a comment that I was going to make on the pie chart. The next time we analyze the data, right now, every student's vote counts equally. I think it would be better in the future. Maybe we average the data per institution, and then as we're looking at this aggregate data, we take a look at it that way. So just food for thought.
On that same line, I was wondering how much does it represent what the university looks like? How different is your program from the university?
Yeah, and I really, well,
I mean, that's harder to collect. But.
it is, but we do have that data. Our university collects that data. It's completely accessible. We just need somebody willing to put in the time to take a look. Okay, so now to take a look at the academic characteristics. Most of the students here were the second year and third year. This is a little bit important when we think about course design. Are we thinking about how do we help first year students? How do we help fourth year students that are getting ready to graduate? And then I just put these two slides in again because I knew that there's actually several people interested in academic advising. Now, if we take a look at self-reported GPA, we have no idea if they're telling the truth or not, but we have a lot of really good students. 22% of the students are in that 3.8 to 4.0 GPA. We also have a lot of, so if we have our excellent students, we also have a whole lot of really good students after that, and not so many in the 2.5 or I should say less than 3.0 GPA. Now, again, this is not as relevant to undergraduate physiology, especially if we're thinking about the third year, fourth year level, but it is common to see ACT scores and SAT scores as a predictor of potential for academic achievement. However, I would think that when we're getting to the more advanced students, probably other things are a little bit more important. I just put that in case you were curious about it. All right, what are their primary majors? This is an example of what not to do. Now, the idea is what we were going to have a list that they could just, a list of majors and they could just identify with what most closely matched. It didn't turn out that way, and the students just typed in their major. So I went through, I found it strangely satisfying, which bothers me a little bit. I went through, we had 667 respondents, but somehow 683 people identified a major. And I sorted, and I placed the majors into these different groups. Now, what's interesting is that way back to, before we even had phone calls about PMIG and setting up a meeting, we have always really gone back and forth about what to do with exercise physiology. Is it a standalone thing? Is it physiology? And I just wanted to point out here that we could not have planned this if we tried. 207 students from each discipline responded to the survey. But again, if you're interested in other majors of students who take a physiology course or have a physiology program, I listed them there.
Do you have the opportunity for students to put a double major or multiple majors?
Yes.
Okay.
That is my next slide. And it was disastrous. So again, I had to go through and sort through what students reported. What I did my best. And this is a partial list that are what minors students had. They also had the opportunity to type in certificate programs, and they would put a BS. That's my certificate program. So we still have a little work to do there. Yeah, but I did try to bold the most frequently reported minors. And I thought this one was interesting because it gives us, physiology. I think a lot of times these undergraduate students have in mind, I need to go to med school, this is going to be my major. But perhaps it's the minor that gives an indication what they're actually interested in and what they might like. They get to kind of dabble in something different. So it was interesting to see that a lot of these were not directly related to physiology or science, and that's fine. All right, that's a little bit about the students themselves and their demographic and academic characteristics. What do they want to do? And importantly, do they think they're going to be able to accomplish that? So here again is another example of what not to do. This did not work, so we have to refine our model, but I'm going to give you're going to get the main point. It's going to be so crystal clear. We asked the students, we had a list of professions, click and drag into the boxes your top 3 choices for your desired future career. What do you think they chose? Okay, that's the main thing that I wanted you to get. The rest of this was very difficult to decipher. A lot of students are interested in medicine. There are some other careers that they are also interested in. Now, for the other category on the previous slide, they were able to type in something. These are some of the other things that they indicated an interest in. And it's interesting from, I guess for me, from a philosophical perspective, how does physiology fit in with some of these other careers as well? A little bit more along the lines of physiology as a service course. Or what else can you do with a physiology major? Now, the next set of questions that we asked were related to career confidence. How optimistic are you that you will obtain either your primary occupational goal, being medicine, from a lot of them, or one of your top 3? And on a 5-point scale, 3.8, 4.2, something like that. If you go through and do the math, that's about an 80% confidence rating. So that's not too bad. Now, the next question, do you have a job or school offer for after graduation? And this is what they said. For a lot of the students, it was really too early. Maybe they're just sophomores, maybe they're juniors. They're putting the pieces in place, but it's not actually something that's on their radar right now. Now, the other part of this graph, yes, in my field of study, 13%. This is a little bit counterintuitive to the previous slide that said they had fairly good confidence they were going to get one of their top 3 choices. A few of them had a job not related to their field of study. 13% going to take a gap year, probably reassess, maybe come up with plan B, something like that. And then a proportion of them were still waiting to hear back. All right, the next series of questions. What are students' perceptions of their physiology coursework? Yeah.
Go back to the last section a little bit. So
Yeah.
When you put the minors and the other majors, so I'm sure we all appreciate that to get into medical school these days, or actually any clinically based program, the breadth of you is getting more and more important, and the uniqueness of you is more and more important. So it doesn't surprise me at all that you have a broad range of things that declare that student to be broader, different, more compassionate, more person-oriented, whatever. So to me, that's as important now as the physiology major and these kids succeeding in the next piece. So
Yeah.
that I think is a really important part of what you found here.
So let me ask you this. I would agree with that. Do you think students understand that? Are they getting the message that it's important to be a well-rounded person, not just to have an A in organic
When we
chemistry?
have wonderful advisors, that does happen, yes. But I think we all need to take note of that as we go forward, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Similarly to one of the previous slides, on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 is extremely unlikely, 5 is extremely likely. How important is it to know physiology to achieve your preferred career? And the average was 4.3. So what do you think about that? I'm a physiology major. How important is physiology to my future career? 4.3? That's like 85%. I'm a little surprised by that. I thought it would be higher. Yeah, your physiology major? That's true. That's true. And that goes back to the interpretation, or basing the interpretation on the students in the class.
But also, equally to point out, before we read too much into this number,
Yeah.
is that a lot of these students still have no idea what career they're going to end up in at this point in time. They would like to end up in one of those 3 career fields that might be physiology related, but also we might be progressing. I might argue that we might be progressing into a more informed time, where it feels more necessary to be informed about how your body works. So
Yeah.
that might be a confounding variable here. I don't know.
Yeah, and it
not
might
to say that
be-
it's not important. It clearly is.
Yeah. And this is why it's so important to talk about this. You know, I come in with my assumptions, and hearing that other people interpret the data a little bit different than me is important. One other thing that might be happening is that students begin with physiology, they get into it, and then they're like, wait a second, I'm not sure that this is it. Maybe they're doing some self-reflecting right now, you know, at this stage, and really hopefully thinking, do I need physiology? Is it important to me? We don't know where they are in that stage of their development. And then I thought it was important, how much do you actually like physiology? I'm really surprised by the students who tell me they want to go to medical school, but they don't really like physiology. If that's the case, you know, maybe we need to set some more realistic expectations. Generally speaking, 35% said they enjoyed physiology a great deal. This would be 5 on the scale. The red, those who enjoyed physiology a lot, that would, you know, that's the lower category. But by and large, most students like physiology, some just a little, 1% not at all. All right. So the next, I know this is difficult to read, but what I want to remind you is that these slides will be available, and you will be able to take a look at these on your own. We ask what course activities are incorporated into your physiology course. Select all that apply. Over 3,000 responses. So before you even take a look at what they're doing, what do you think about the number of things that they're doing in class? It's a lot. When I had physiology, I sat in class, I wrote down everything the instructor said. I don't know if I learned it, I memorized it, and somewhere down the line, I understood it. But I wasn't asked to do a lot. I wasn't asked to do all of the things that we're asking our students to do in their physiology course. Now, at the very top is lecture, review of pre-recorded lectures, case studies, in-class polling, small group discussion, in-class assignments, out-of-class assignments, lab activities, simulations, writing activities, professional development, online discussions. There's a lot that students are doing as part of their course activities. Also, rate how useful you feel each course activity listed below is with regard to learning physiology. Again, students had the opportunity for free response. They wrote literally, and I mean literally, not figuratively, thousands of comments about what they think about the activities that are involved in their courses. So if any of you have an interest and you want to sort through, the data is there. But here's what they said. What are the most important things you can do to learn physiology? What do you think about this? basically, I study on my own, I go to class, and I complete the assignments, and that's how I'm going to learn physiology.
So do you think students are equating learning physiology with performance score on an exam? So these things maybe they interpret as this is what gave me a grade, my grade in physiology, but the actual learning might be an independent variable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting, though, because we are, and Dee, I think you made the comment, you've been doing the flipped or the blended courses since the 90s. And, your students weren't part of the study, so, they might have a different set of responses. But we talk about what we do that we think is effective for learning. The students don't necessarily, they're not reporting that they see eye to eye. So either they are interpreting learning differently than we are, or they're still clinging to what they think they should do. Lisa, go ahead.
So Jen, I just wanted to say I have a paper coming out, and I asked students to rank. I listed the resources that I provided them, and I asked them to rank them into what they perceived were the most helpful. Lecture was the most helpful thing.
Yeah.
And I was just knocked out because, we have a critical thinking book, or we did retrieval practice, and that's what they perceived was it. I found the same darn thing.
Yeah. All right. Go ahead.
I'm wondering how many of the students actually had laboratory experience with their physiology course.
I have that data. I wasn't going to present it, but if we have time, I'll sneak it in at the end.
I think, too, when you think about the way we present information to our students, we might tell them that we're going to do an active learning activity, but if we don't explain the purpose behind that, they don't think about how that's affecting their learning. So unless you add that to the activity, like this will help you because you're interacting with other students, you might have to teach them, it'll help your memory retention, they're not even aware that they're learning in that scenario, or they're not even trying.
Yeah, and that's part of what I wanted to highlight on this slide. There's a mismatch. And there's probably several reasons for it, but it's something that we can be working on. If the goal is student learning, here's some things that we can address.
I would just say the attending lecture, you might say attending course sessions, because I think you're presuming that the lecture is the main component of the class. So I could see a student being somewhat confused if, in my class session, they complete internet searches and they participate in structured group activities. So it may just be showing up for class, but because there's a variance in how classes are taught, the attending lecture to me seems a little confusing. So in iterations, I would say attending course, like attending class.
I think that's a great
versus
idea.
lecture.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to ask the questions of a control group, because I think this is probably prior learning, in large part that this is what brought them there.
Exactly.
They've been doing this for 14 years or 16 years or however long, and this is how they know they're successful. So I think they probably don't even, I would guess if you ask this is what you get from everybody, or you get the student, if they're like, how important is a student learning English or French? I think they would say very similar things, even though some of those are performance-based.
We can stratify this out too by academic year if we wanted to. But again, I wanted to, this is the snapshot, the conversation starter. We can continue the conversations later on. 5 minutes. Okay, I can do it. Talking about core concepts of physiology, we did this yesterday. Here's what students reported they were learning in their physiology course. And I know I said top 5, but there was a 3-way tie for 4, 5, and 6, so I put them all in. Now, if we take a look at asking them, which of these are relevant for your future career? This is what they reported. So they did actually redeem themselves from the previous slide, because they said what's important: the homeostasis, structure, function, interdependence, causality, scientific reasoning. That's actually pretty good. I was impressed when I saw that. All right, that was a little bit about their physiology coursework. The last area here, what are their perceptions of their physiology program? We asked this question. Some undergraduate physiology programs offer standalone courses aimed at building skills and abilities such as critical thinking, working effectively in a group setting, communication, thinking as a scientist. Which statement below most closely matches your opinion of this type of course? And this is how they responded. I previously completed this course and it was helpful. I previously completed this course and I didn't like it. And as you see, it's maybe not for everybody, but a lot of students actually did find this kind of a course helpful. Now, the next two questions, my program does not offer this type of course. My program does not offer this kind of course, but I might be interested in it if it was available. That also suggests students are receptive, and this might be something good for the first or second year of the program. Now, the next one, indicate which of the following experiential learning activities you have completed or will complete. I thought this slide was important to put in. Again, it reinforces students are doing an awful lot in addition to just knowing physiology content. And if you have an interest in any of these types of activities, internship, study abroad, research, preceptorships, service-based learning, outreach, community service, others such as job shadowing, I put the slide in here. You can see the data and you can take a look at the kinds of opportunities your program offers compared with the opportunities available to this cohort as a whole. Now these are my last two slides. Preparedness, I think it's two. Preparedness for your career. On a scale of 1 to 5, rate the following statements. I feel prepared. My coursework has provided me with the necessary skills. My program has prepared me. How confident are the students reporting that they feel? They're not feeling really great. And this probably isn't statistically different, but they do have a slightly more favorable view of the resources within the program than perhaps in the course itself. Okay. And then I lied, there's one more slide after this, I think. But this is going back to the academic advising. Academic advisors were knowledgeable and about required and recommended coursework based on my careers. Students felt, out of these three questions, they felt okay about that. Generally, the academic advisors could tell them which courses to take. When it came to recommending non-coursework related opportunities, there was a little bit less confidence in what their advisors were able to help them with. And then we also asked if the academic advisors could satisfactorily answer their questions. Now, the next question we asked, if you have or had career-related questions, how likely are you to receive meaningful feedback? Where do students where do they go when they want to learn something? Yeah, yep. So you can interpret this figure as you would like, but I would like to say one more thing about this slide. Physiology professors rock compared with other professors. Yay! Okay, I went too fast. What we learned from this. Number one, we can do this. We can generate a survey. We can administer it. It takes a little bit of work, but we can get feedback about students' perception of their academic experience. And one thing, we have many people in the room who have experience kind of in ramping up the scope of the survey. So I would be interested in hearing how do we get this? How do we make this bigger? But I am also wondering if PMIG has a role here. If we could get the survey set up so that it could be used by individual courses or programs to assess how they're doing and provide meaningful feedback that way. There are already most programs have the exit surveys and things like that, but maybe PMIG could generate something that the program can use at different time points to gauge how their students are doing. So I thought that was pretty important. The second thing is we really can't interpret the demographic data and apply it to undergraduate physiology as a whole because there simply wasn't enough representation from all the different physiology programs. Lastly, students feel their coursework and major program has moderately prepared them to enter the workforce, and they're moderately confident that maybe they'll get a job. And participation in experiential learning and perhaps coursework emphasizing career skills are both regarded relatively favorably by many students that we surveyed. So with that, I have a question slide. I have a feeling we're probably out of time, but hopefully you found something that you found interesting here, and hopefully you all continue to talk about some of these results among yourselves. And again, I'm really happy to talk about the data in more detail. Yeah, Val.
Just really quick, all the programs that did participate, this made me think that you guys should share back your data with the students. Like, I think that because a lot of, like at Michigan State particularly, our students fill out surveys for every class at the end of the semester. And I feel like they don't take it seriously because they don't see any impact of what they say. So why would they even fill out the short answer if no one looks at it? So I think that you should, yeah, Jeff said no one cares. So I think you should prove to them that you care by sharing it back and like recognizing that you did read what they wrote. So I'm happy to share it back with you. Like Jen
I just
said.
have one other comment related to that. This is an online survey. I am not kidding, 30 students fill it out more than once. I don't know if they just thought it's typed out, they're going to get more extra credit because they did it more than once, and there's not a real live person that actually is taking a look at what their responses are. So, but yeah, well, that would be something else. Anyway, thank you all for your attention.